Judy, in the book you say, tell me which of the pressing issues of our time keep you awake at night, and I'll tell you how the old rules of profit maximization and short-term thinking contribute to those problems. That suggests that whilst the rules may be changing, which is the subject of the book, it may be a slow and painful process. Do you think that's the case?
I think there's a great chance to move the needle now. We simply, climate change, inequality, myriad other concerns that the public has, that people who work in business articulate. We can't move forward without business at the table in a fulsome way. And we are seeing the change. It's happening in part because of the requirement to be attuned to what we're hearing from the public, because of the decline in trust in institutions, and a real call to action by business leaders. And we're also seeing some new leadership emerge in the business sector. So I'm pretty bullish that we can really make some change here. It's not going to be easy, and there are competing interests that make it difficult to move forward at times. But yes, I unquestionably think this is a time of important change.
Well, you say that change is, happening, and you highlight some of the examples of leaders that get it. You also indicate that the ones that do get it are achieving competitive advantage. Could you give like maybe one or two examples of that?
I think some of the examples are companies that have already been at this for a long period of time. You take companies like Southwest or Herman Miller. These are companies that have very strong cultures. They understand that culture is a driving force behind innovation. Supporting employees in a way that we get the best out of them in terms of identifying both risk and opportunity. Superior customer service. Many ways in which culture is kind of the opportunity to create decisions that really stand the test of time here. So yes, there are newer executives, in some of the tech sector and beyond that. But there's also industrial firms that have done things differently. I write about Delta Airlines, which coming out of bankruptcy created a very robust profit sharing plan. Once again, when airlines are profitable again, will again support employees and speak to this question of making sure that we are compensating fairly the real value contributors up and down the food chain inside business. So we're seeing lots of exciting examples of companies moving forward.
One of the interesting things is that, quite often the same companies are mentioned as examples of people that are getting it right. But in the book, you mentioned one or two that were being criticized that weren't getting it right, but managed, they smelled the coffee and they changed their ways. And I think you cite Walmart as one of those examples here.
Walmart has changed a great deal over the last decade. When they kind of designed their version of a sustainable kind of plan for moving forward, it came out of 10 years of having a hard time being able to get decent press, because of the pressures being brought to bear by labor organizations and environmental organizations that were using Walmart and its extraordinary brand and remarkable reach as kind of a case example of both where change has to happen and one that might be holding us back. And, we've seen Walmart really move the needle, and because of their capacity, because of their remarkable, reach globally and the massive supply chain that they represent, including, many significant, globally significant enterprises that are suppliers to Walmart in their own right, needing to kind of move along with the pace that Walmart had finally started to move. And now we're seeing Walmart, ask questions not just about the environmental kind of consequences of business decisions, but looking more closely at the human element of this as well. So it is a remarkable story of change.
That's interesting. I mean, in the book, you talk about the 6 new rules of change. We don't have time to go through the 6 of them now, but is there one or two that sort of are, you think, the most important? If there was one that people ought to take notice of, which one would you indicate?
Well, I would start with the one that's written up as chapter 1. And basically, you know, a generation or more ago, the value of firms was kind of a bricks and mortar value. You know, when General Motors was at the top of the, you know, the tables for market valuation, it was defined in very conventional terms. The companies that are at the top of valuations, stock valuations today, have very little tangible assets. It's all about the intangibles. It's about reputation. It's about their intellectual property. It's about their employee attraction and retention. It's about, you know, their license to operate, and the acuity with which they manage to these questions is what is a huge driver of change.
One of the other big changes that came across to me in the book is your comment that the providers of capital are given too much power, far more credibility, far more power than they deserve.
Well, I certainly think that's the case. You know, as Marjorie Kelly, the author of Divine Right of Capital, wrote years back, you know, you got your money at the IPO. You know, Roger Martin's work is another one that we could look to in this domain. That basically the stock market is an aftermarket. It's rare that a company returns to the stock market. What we're seeing today is more, you know, retrenchment of capital, you know, share buybacks and reducing the amount of capital at risk. So, or the amount of capital circulating in the public market. You know, we've seen a lot of decline in the public market. So, you know, companies today just don't need as much. They don't need as much capital, and it's not one voice. It's many voices. There are many kinds of investors. They have different timeframes. They have different objectives. You know, they overrepresent in the conversation here. You know, capital markets are not the real drivers from my perspective. It really is agency within companies, and executives inside companies are much more motivated to drive change than investors, which are conflicted by wanting to ultimately make, you know, focus most on their own valuations.